28. I didn't call a doctor for my pregnant Amish wife. I regretted it for 52 years. My name is Joseph Yoder, and I am 81 years old this winter. The letter came on a Tuesday, in the second week of November, slipped between the gas bill and a seed catalog I had no use for anymore. The envelope was thin, the handwriting unfamiliar, and my name was spelled the old way, with 2 dots above the O, the way only people from the district where I was raised still wrote it. I sat down at the kitchen table, where Rebecca and I once ate our first supper as husband and wife, and I held that envelope for almost an hour before I opened it. My hands are not steady anymore. They were not steady that morning either, but for a different reason. I knew, before I read a single word, that someone had finally come looking for the truth I had folded up and pushed down for 52 years. I did not yet know who. I did not yet know how much they had already pieced together. I only knew that the quiet life I had built on top of that February night in 1973 was about to crack open, and I would have to decide, at 81, whether I had the courage to let it. The letter was from a woman named Hannah Byler. She wrote that she was the daughter of Sadie Byler, the midwife who attended my wife. She said her mother had passed in September, and that among her things she had found a small leather notebook her mother had kept for nearly 60 years. My wife's name was in it, Rebecca Yoder, February 19, 1973. Hannah did not say what was written beside the name. She only asked if I would meet her. She would drive down from Lancaster County to the little Mennonite town in Ohio where I had moved after I left the Amish, and she would bring the notebook with her. She asked if the second Saturday of December would suit me. She wrote that she was sorry to disturb an old man, but that her mother had spoken Rebecca's name on her deathbed, and Hannah felt she could not keep what she had found to herself. I read the letter 4 times, then I folded it back into its envelope and placed it under the sugar bowl, which is where Rebecca used to leave the notes she wrote me when she went into the garden. I have never been able to put anything else in that spot. To understand why a single letter could undo a man at my age, I have to take you back to the winter Rebecca and I had been married for 2 years and 4 months. We were living in a small farmhouse on the eastern edge of our district, in a hollow that the wind never seemed to find. Rebecca was 23, I was 29. She was carrying our first child, and she was so happy about it that she sang while she canned. And she had never been a singer before. Her voice was thin and crooked, but I loved it. I would come in from the barn just to hear her get the high notes wrong. She was due in late February. The pregnancy had been hard from the 5th month on. Her ankles swelled until she could not lace her own shoes. She had headaches that made her sit very still in dark rooms. She would press her palms against her temples and breathe through her teeth. And when I asked her what was wrong, she would smile and say it was only the weight of the baby, and that her mother had been the same way. She said this many times, so many times that I came to believe it the way you believe the sound of your own roof in a storm. Sadie Byler, the midwife, came to see her every 2 weeks at first, then every week. Sadie was a thin, careful woman in her 50s, with red knuckles and a voice that never rose above the level of a tea kettle just before it sings. She told us Rebecca was a strong young woman. She told us the baby was positioned well. She told us many things that I held on to like a man holding a rope in deep water. Once, in the 7th month, Sadie stayed longer than usual. I remember she sat with Rebecca in the front room while I split kindling on the porch, and when she came out, she stopped on the top step and looked at me for a long moment without speaking. I asked her if everything was as it should be. She said, "Joseph, if her headaches get worse, or if she sees lights that are not there, you come find me. You come find me quick." That was all she said. She did not say doctor. She did not say hospital. She did not say the word that the English call preeclampsia, because I do not think she knew the word, and I know I did not. In our district, our bishop had been firm for many years on the matter of doctors. He did not forbid them. He was not that kind of man. But he taught that a strong faith and a good midwife were what God had given us, and that running to the English hospital at every fright was a sign that a man trusted machines more than the Lord. My father, who was a deacon, had said the same thing all my life. When my younger brother had been kicked by a horse at the age of 9, my father had set the leg himself, with Sadie's help, and my brother had walked with a limp ever since. We did not speak of the limp. We spoke of God's mercy that he had not lost the leg. So when Rebecca's headaches grew worse in the middle of February, and she began to see what she called sparkles at the edges of her eyes, I did what my father would have done. I went to find Sadie. I did not go to the phone shanty at the end of the road, the one the district used for emergencies, the one with the number for the dispatcher taped to the wall in 2 languages. I went to Sadie. I am going to stop the pass there for a moment and come back to my kitchen table, because I do not yet have the strength to walk you through that last night without you first understanding what I have done with the 52 years since. After Rebecca died, I left the Amish. Not in anger. I did not have anger in me then. I had nothing in me then. I left because I could no longer sit on a bench in our meeting house and listen to our bishop preach about the will of God without standing up and saying something I could not take back. So I went quietly. I told my father I needed time. I rented a room above a feed store in a Mennonite town 3 counties away. I cut my beard. I learned to drive a car. I worked 29 years as a bookkeeper for a hardware company, and I married again, 12 years after Rebecca, to a kind Mennonite widow named Marion, who already had 2 grown children, and asked me almost nothing about my first wife. Marion died 6 years ago of a stroke, in her sleep, in the bed beside me. I woke up to a hand that had gone cold, and I thought, for one terrible moment, that I was 29 again. I have a stepson and a stepdaughter who call me on Sundays. They are good to me. They do not know about Rebecca. They know I was Amish once. They know I had a first wife. They do not know her name. I have never said it out loud in their hearing. Not once in 40-some years. That is the silence Hannah Byler's letter walked into. She came on the 2nd Saturday of December, exactly as she said she would. She was perhaps 50, plain dressed but not Amish anymore, with her mother's red knuckles and a quiet way of sitting that made me feel I was being read. She brought a small black notebook with a cracked spine, and she brought a tin of molasses cookies that she set on the table between us, as if she were apologizing for what was inside the book. I made coffee. My hands shook when I poured it, and she pretended not to see. She told me her mother had kept that notebook for every birth she ever attended. Every one. Date, mother's name, hours of labor, outcome. 3 letters in the margin, L for live, S for stillborn. A 3rd letter she did not explain at first. She opened the book to a page with a faded ribbon in it and turned it toward me. There was Rebecca's name in Sadie's small, careful hand, the date, the hours, which I remembered as days, and in the margin a single letter I had not expected. It was the letter D. I asked her what it meant. Hannah looked down at her hands for a long moment, and then she said, "It meant my mother believed the death was preventable. She used that letter only twice in 60 years. The other one was in 1981. She wrote a note beside both of them. Do you want to read what she wrote beside your wife's name?" I did not answer. I could not. She turned the book a little further toward me, and I read, in Sadie's handwriting, in ink that had faded to the color of weak tea. Told the husband at 7 months. Told him again the night she took ill. He went to the bishop. The bishop came and prayed. No one rode for the doctor. God forgive us all. I have to tell you what happened in our bedroom that night in February of 1973, because Sadie's note has only the bones of it, and the flesh has been mine to carry. Rebecca woke me a little after midnight. She said her head hurt so badly she could not see my face. She said the sparkles were everywhere now, like a window full of broken glass. I lit the lamp, and I saw that her hands and her face were swollen in a way I had not seen the day before. She tried to get out of bed, and her legs would not hold her. I caught her under the arms. She was so heavy. She had never been a heavy woman. I ran to the barn and I hitched the buggy. The snow was light, but the road was bad. I drove first to Sadie's house, because that is what I had been told to do, all my life, by every voice that mattered to me. Sadie came at once. She took one look at Rebecca, and she said, very quietly, "Joseph, this is past me. You need to go to the shanty. You need to call for an ambulance, now." I want you to understand what I did next, because I have spent 52 years trying to understand it myself. I did not go to the shanty. I went to the bishop's house. It was less than half a mile from mine. The shanty was a mile and a quarter the other way, on a road the plow had not yet touched. I told myself the bishop's was closer. I told myself I needed his counsel. I told myself many things on that short ride that I have not been able to repeat in daylight since. The bishop was a good man. by his own lights. He was 64 years old, and he had buried 2 wives and 4 children, and he believed, with all his heart, that the Lord gave and the Lord took away. He came back with me. He sat at Rebecca's bedside and he prayed. He laid his hand on her forehead. He told me that her color was bad, but that God was merciful. He told me that the English hospital was full of strangers and machines, and that if it was her time, she should go home from her own bed. He did not forbid me to ride to the shanty. He did not have to. He only sat there with his hand on her forehead and his head bowed, and Sadie stood in the doorway with her coat still on, and the lamp burned down, and I stood between the two of them like a man frozen halfway across a river. Rebecca had a seizure a little before 3 in the morning. She had another one 20 minutes later. Sadie said the baby would have to come now or neither of them would live. The bishop said we should pray. Sadie looked at me, only at me, and she said, "Joseph, it is your house. It is your wife. You decide." I did not decide. That is the truth. I have not let myself say out loud, until this kitchen, this December, this old woman's daughter sitting across from me with a tin of cookies. I did not say yes to the doctor, and I did not say no. I stood at the foot of the bed and I let the bishop's silence be my answer. Sadie tried. She delivered the baby herself, a little girl, who lived for 19 minutes. Rebecca lived another 40. She did not wake again. She did not say my name at the end. She had said it earlier, when I lit the lamp, and that has had to be enough. I sat across from Hannah Byler with her mother's notebook open between us, and I did something I had not done since the morning of the funeral. I cried. Not the careful crying of an old man at a graveside, but the kind that takes your breath and your dignity and your sense of the room. Hannah did not move. She did not reach for me. She let me have it, the way her mother must have let other women have their grief, without trying to tidy it. When I could speak, I asked her why she had come. I told her I was an old man, that I had no money to leave, no reputation to protect, no family in the church anymore. I asked her what she wanted from me. She said, nothing. My mother carried this for 52 years, and it killed something in her. I did not want to carry it for another 50. I wanted you to know that she tried, and I wanted to know if you would tell me what really happened, so I could write it under her note, in my own hand, and close the book. So I told her, everything I have just told you, and a few things I will keep for myself. She wrote in the margin in a small, careful hand that looked very much like her mother's. When she was done, she turned the notebook around and let me read it. She had written, "Husband went first to the bishop. Bishop counseled prayer. Husband did not ride for the doctor. He has carried this every day since." She closed the book. She put it back in her bag. She said she would keep it now, and that no one else would ever see it, unless I asked her to bring it out again. I want to tell you that I felt forgiven. I did not. Forgiveness is not a thing another person can hand you across a kitchen table, and I am too old to pretend otherwise. What I felt was something quieter and, I think, more useful. I felt seen. For 52 years I had been the only living person who knew exactly what had happened in that bedroom, and now there were 2 of us, and the weight, while not lifted, was at least shared. After Hannah left, I sat at the table until the light went blue at the windows. I thought about my stepson and stepdaughter. I thought about the photograph of Marion on the bureau and the empty place beside it where I have never put a picture of Rebecca, because I had no picture, and because I did not feel I had the right. I thought about the bishop, who died in 1989, and my father, who died in 1994, and Sadie, who carried that letter D in her notebook for 60 years and spoke Rebecca's name on her deathbed in front of a daughter she had perhaps been hoping would do exactly what she did. I am writing this down now because Hannah asked me, before she left, if I had ever told my own children. I said I had no children. She said, "You have the 2 who call you on Sundays." I did not have an answer for her then. I have one now. I called my stepdaughter the following Wednesday. I asked her if she would come for a long weekend in the spring and bring her brother, because there was something I wanted to tell them about the years before I met their mother. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Dad, we have been waiting." That was all she said. We have been waiting. I do not know how much time I have left. My doctor, and yes, I have one now, and I see him twice a year, and I take the pills he gives me. and I do not pretend any of it is a betrayal of anything. Says my heart is tired but not finished. I would like to live long enough to say Rebecca's name in a room with my stepchildren in it. I would like to say the baby's name too, although we did not have time to give her one, and I have called her, in my own mind, by Rebecca's middle name, which was Ruth, for 52 years. If the title of this confession asks why I did not call a doctor for my pregnant wife, the answer is not that I did not love her. I loved her so much that her thin, crooked singing still wakes me some nights. The answer is that I was a young man who had been taught, gently and steadily and from every direction, that going to the bishop was faith, and going to the shanty was fear. I could not tell that night which voice in me was God, and which voice was only my father. I picked the closer house. I picked the older man. I picked the road I had been driven down all my life, instead of the one Sadie was pointing to with her eyes. I regretted it the morning of the funeral. I regretted it the day I cut my beard. I regretted it on my wedding day to Marion, and on the morning she died, and on every birthday of a child Rebecca and I did not get to raise. I will regret it on the last day I am given, but I will not, any more, regret it alone. The sugar bowl is still on the table. Hannah's letter is no longer under it. In its place I have put a small slip of paper on which I have written, in my own unsteady hand, 2 names, Rebecca, Ruth. I look at them every morning when I sit down for coffee. I do not say them out loud yet, but the paper is there, and the names are there, and that, for an old man who spent 52 years pretending a bedroom door had never closed, is the beginning of something I do not yet have a word for. I think Rebecca, who forgave more easily than I ever deserved, would have called it grace.